All right. Hello, my brothers and sisters. This is Garrett Bake, your brother in arms, and welcome to another episode of Awaken the Guardian. Today's topic, behind the scenes. And all of you are lucky enough to have our first repeat guest, the beautiful, my wife.
You're a dork.
My wife does have a name. Her name is Melissa. And yep, she's still with me. So she's back actually by popular demand. There were quite a few people that were inquiring about her, and they wanted to know more about her side of things, right? We as cops were super cool at talking about us, like, yeah, I caught that bad guy, it was so cool. Or yeah, I seized 15 pounds of dope, and we fist bump and high five and everything. And the whole time the wives are doing what?
I can't believe you did that.
And rolling their eyes and saying, okay, now come home so you can change the dirty diaper.
That's the best part.
So we're kind of going to go back and forth a little bit, but we're going to go a little more in depth than we did last time. Not about me being an idiot, because we kind of went through that. I'm sure we'll touch on that subject again. But the main focus is going to be what it's actually like to be on the other side of everything that we experience as police officers. Like, what's it like to have a home life that isn't set, a home life that's varied, a home life that isn't as consistent as you'd like it to be? Like, how does a police wife deal with that? So that's what we're going to talk about. But I want to start it off kind of telling a story. Well, there's going to be a couple of stories, but the first one has to do with a friend of ours, a family, I should say, family friends of ours. The other day we were talking to the wife and talking about just life, life in general. And we were talking to her about an incident that happened. Unfortunately, her husband works for one of the local departments around here. I'm not going to reveal too much, but he does ride a motorcycle. And unfortunately, last week, one of his fellow officers was shot and killed. And if any of you have experienced that in your department, you know exactly what that feels like. It's hollow, it's empty, it's nerve-wracking, it's anger, it's frustration, it's stress, it's everything involved in that. But that's what you go through. So talking to her was a little bit different. And Melissa, I'm going to ask you quite a few questions. Like, what was that like talking to her and seeing what she'd experienced?
Well, just looking at her, just her physically, as she talked to us, you can tell that she was in a lot of pain. Like, she was on the verge of crying, for starters. She was just telling us that this week had been extra hard on her because of the fallen officer and all the additional duties that he had. And he wasn't complaining, and I don't think any police officer would complain anyway, but it was just not seeing him for 3, 4, 5 days already.
And so what was that doing for her? Because they have 4 boys under the age of 7. So what was that like for her?
Well, I don't know very many dads that take all 4 of their kids out when they're that young, but you try entertaining that many kiddos at the same time, going anywhere, getting them dressed, getting them somewhere on time, keeping them fed, happy, not fighting, especially all boys, keeping them from causing trouble and climbing on anything they possibly see.
And destroying everything in their sight. Like, let's be honest, that's what boys do. But what I want you to hear is what Melissa's saying. Like, there is no difference between a police wife and a regular wife. So all you police officers that think that somehow your wife possesses superpowers because you're a cop, like, it's time to get real. Well, she does possess superpowers because she does all this stuff around the house when you aren't there.
And that's just a huge burden. And you know what? Just belonging to all these police wife Facebook groups, it's cute because they have super mom shirts. What's my power? I'm a Leo Leo wife, and you know what? Doing the duties of a mom to begin with are extremely difficult, but then adding all of the duties of a father on top of it is just, that's a different story. And a lot of times, okay, I want to say almost every single police wife I have met plays the persona of being super strong.
And what's the reality?
They're crying on the inside.
See, what you men don't realize is, yes, you go off and you play heroes and you go to save the day. But while you're playing superhero, your wife is at home dealing with reality. Like this poor mother that we were talking to, 4 boys under the age of 7. And for the last 5 days, 6 days, she's had to deal with all 4 of those boys by herself. Now, she didn't ask for it. And it's not like she can't handle it. Like, I'm not calling her incapable of doing this. But the stress, think about this, the stress related to not only basically being a single mother, but also knowing that her husband is in a line of work where she may end up getting the knock on the door in the middle of the night because something happened to him. So I want you guys to start seeing just how much your career affects those behind you. Most importantly, your wife and your children. So when we were talking to her, like, what were some of the things that she mentioned that her husband was doing that was just basically causing her grief and pain and anguish?
Well, one is watching her husband go through just all the emotions of having someone on her department that just passed away. That in itself, you could see her physically just changing, like her whole body and her facial expressions completely changed. Like she just looked like she was going to cry just watching her husband go through it. And then the fact that he had additional duties, and not that she's complaining, and I'm sure no one would ever complain about having additional duties that come with a fallen officer, but it is kind of taxing on the family because he hasn't been home.
Right. So I want you guys to think about this. Like, there isn't a one of you, and I know this for a fact because I did this, there isn't a one of you that when the call comes, hey, we need you, that you're going to say no. Like, it's not going to happen. That's one of the reasons you're a police officer. Like, you're more than willing to do what others aren't. And so what ends up happening is you always say yes for the greater good. But when you say yes, you are sacrificing your loved ones at home. And trust me, like, I want to go a little more detail with Melissa. So during my career, I worked SWAT, I worked gangs, I worked undercover. Like, I did all the quote-unquote cool jobs. But because I was doing all the cool jobs, in fact, during one stretch, I was working gangs and SWAT at the same time. So there were periods of time where I'd work 24, 27, 30. I think my record, if you will, was 36 hours. 36 hours straight. Now, at this point, the only thing I'm thinking about is trying to stay awake. But what's going through, like, your head and your mind, and what are you experiencing when I'm gone for these, like, extended stretches of time?
Well, during those days, I don't know how many times I literally wanted to call and complain. Like, how is that even safe for anyone to, like, just do daily living stuff, let alone carry a gun and deal with situations that require, you know, like, straightforward thinking? How is that even safe? What is that going to do to you? What is that going to do to the rest of our family?
And so what was that like for you when I would, like, basically disappear for a day, an entire 24-hour period, and then have to come home, and literally the only thing I wanted to do was crash out?
That was just, it was frustrating because I wanted to break. And yeah, I got to sleep. I got to enjoy the kids, but like crap. Like, I still wanted a break and wanted to talk to someone other than kids and have a conversation with you and that connection, and that was just not there.
So what you're hearing is her tell you the honest truth. Like, I get it. Every single one of you is just like me. I mean, you could try and deny it, but you're just like me. If there's one thing that you can't replace with your family, it's time. You cannot replace time. You cannot manipulate time. You cannot replace time. Like, there's nothing, you have zero control over time. There are 24 hours in a day, and if you work 24 hours in those days, guess what? Like, that's 24 hours, that's an entire day that you missed away from your family. So, when I'm working these like 24, 20, whatever, these long shifts, inside my head, the only thing I'm thinking is, wow, I'm making a difference. I'm helping the community. I'm catching the bad guy.
Making more money.
Or making more money. And in the meantime, my personal life is falling apart. Because just like a garden, right? If any of you have ever had a garden, how does the garden grow? Well, not on its own. You kind of have to take care of it. You have to water it. You have to pull the weeds out. Like, you have to constantly be taking care of it. And if you're not around to take care of it, what happens? It dies. Like, that's just it. There's no way around it. So your relationship with your wife, your relationship with your kids is exactly the same. So for all those years that I was playing the quote-unquote hero at work, what was happening to our personal relationship?
That one's easy. We didn't have one.
Why?
I think we lived completely separate lives at that point.
Listen to that, gentlemen. We slept in the same bed, kind
Not
of.
even. Like, our bed was never made.
Yeah.
I would get in and you would get out.
Yep. So listen to that. We lived in the same house, but we almost lived separate lives. It was almost like we were roommates. She would work. She was a teacher, school teacher, and so her shift was usually, morning till midday. Well, by that time, I was usually headed to work, and then I'd come home super late at night or super early in the morning, and we would give each other a high five, it seemed like sometimes, and then she would go to work and I would go to sleep. And like, that was our relationship. Like, it was one in passing. So let me ask you, like, what did you think the passion level or the connection level was at this point? Because it happened for quite a few years.
It happened for several years where I was telling our friend that people honestly thought I was a single mom.
And why did they think that?
They only knew you by pictures. No one knew who you were. No one had ever met you. And even if they did meet you, you intimidated the crap out of them.
Yep, because I couldn't turn it off. I was working so much I literally could not turn it off. And all you men know exactly what I'm talking about. The hypervigilance, everyone's a bad guy, I'm gonna jump on everybody. And the poor, nice guy, Mr. Dad down the street doesn't dare come within 20 feet of you because he thinks you're gonna eat him. But anyway, back to the relationship. I want you guys to know this. You want sex from your wife. You want to connect with her on a deeper level. And just because you put on a badge and a gun does not guarantee you any intimacy.
Nope, not unless you're at a bachelorette party.
Not unless you're at a bachelorette party.
Yeah, not gonna happen.
So, explain what it was like when I would work all these crazy hours and these crazy days, and then I'd come home and then try and snuggle up, and it'd be like, hey, and then you're just kind of, no. What was that like when there's no connection between us, yet I think that everything's exactly the same, and I'm coming trying to score? What's going through your mind?
It would would piss me off. Beyond belief, it would piss me off.
What is that?
I want to be shown some sort of appreciation, taken out, something. Not just, oh, I haven't seen you in 3-4 days. Let me just snuggle right here and expect something out of me. I'm like, no, you can't even say anything beyond a hello, and now you want something more.
How many of you men can relate to this? Like, there was literally a period of time where I would get pissed off at my wife because she didn't want to have sex with me. And I blamed her. Like, I would literally blame her for not wanting to have sex with me. Why don't you want to? You're my wife. Don't you love me? And, like, what other interesting things would I say?
I wouldn't say you would say, you would try. So,
Like, I would literally, it was like trying to hook up in high school. I'd be like,
oh, he is very bad at that too.
no, I was bad at that. But it's literally like, hey, like, and I'd be like, you know, trying to hit on her, and kiss her neck, and rub her shoulders.
Not even, you wish. I think you would have gotten more if you even tried that. It was just, hi, I'm here naked.
Yes, that was also true. So most of the time, like, I wouldn't even try to seduce her. Like,
No.
the seduction was, here I am naked, let's go. And not like the movies or anything that you watch on the internet, man. This does not turn on a woman, especially your wife. So you heard her kind of allude to it. Like, at this period of time, like, were we ever going out together?
No. And even if we did, we wouldn't talk.
So we had zero communication. We had zero, or a pretty sorry excuse for a sex life. And I'm wondering why things aren't working. While I'm driving off to work again for another crazy call out. And so, like, what are you starting to feel? Like, as this is happening over and over and over again?
There were times, honestly, like, where I said, okay, if we ever did get divorced, it'd be fine because I can go live at my grandma's house, even though I wouldn't want to live in that town. I'm like, well, at least I have a place to live.
Like, these are the thoughts that are going through her mind. She's not thinking about, oh, what can I do to fix him? Because, like, how many years did you try and do that?
What, 13?
So, 13 years, she tries to help me.
And only get yelled at if I ever tried to.
And all I would do was yell at her. Why? Because she didn't understand. She didn't get what it's like to be a cop. She didn't understand what it's like to see dead bodies and people that have been shot and run over and drugs and drug addicts and whores and, like, she doesn't see it, right? So she should automatically understand what it's like to be a cop. Meanwhile, she knows none of this because the communication level is at zero. Like, the only communication that I had when I got home had to do with food or had to do with sex, I think. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah, because the whole kids was out of the question.
Like, I would tell myself that I was a good dad.
Well, yeah, because you needed a break, which I totally agreed with, but you never got around to it.
So I would tell myself that I was a good dad because I'd take the kids to the park for a couple minutes. Or I'd play a game with them for a couple minutes. Like, but there was no connection. There was zero connection. I was literally trying to escape my wife more than I was trying to build a connection with my kids. So what you guys see is missing here is this big thing that we call communication. Communication and attention. So the first problem was this. I was unwilling to communicate what was going on at work. Like, the only thing my wife knew was that I got another call out. The only thing she knew is that I was probably not coming back till the next morning. That's the only thing she knew. Why? Because that's the only thing that I would tell her.
Yes, because years before that, one day you swore you would never tell me anything again because I rolled my eyes once. Like you were showing me pictures of something and supposedly I rolled my eyes. I did. I'm like, I can't believe you did that. Whatever. You would jump over walls and tear your brand new pants and stuff like that all the time. And after that, you swore you would never tell me anything ever again.
So, see, what I did was the classic child's move, which is I'm going to take my toys home and play by myself. Like, literally, I took my toys and I said, you're not going to play with them, I'm going to play by myself. And this is how I treated our relationship. So, because I was trying to connect with my wife and at one point felt like I was being slighted, I completely shut down. I
For
refused-
13 years.
For how long?
13 years.
For 13 years. It was somewhere around 13 because the police academy or whatnot.
Well,
but
then 15. I think at 15.
not 15.
A crap long time.
A crap long time. That's more accurate of a statement. So let's just call it somewhere between 10 and 12 years. Which for those of you who keep count, that's a decade. Like most of your kids are almost teenagers by then. I would play the sulking child over and over and over again. Why? Because I expected her to understand what it was like. I expected her to, quote, get it. Mind you, she had never been to a police academy. How many ride-alongs did you go on with me? One?
One, and you wouldn't let me out of the car.
One, and I wouldn't let her out of the car. So somehow, with one ride-along that I don't think was even a full shift,
No, because I yawned and you got mad.
there you go. You can see a pattern here? So, not even one full shift, never having gone to the police academy, never paid attention to a police scanner. Well, we studied for my test in the academy, but that was about it. I somehow expected her to understand everything that was going on in my life. I somehow expected her to understand what it was like to be a cop. I somehow expected her to get it. And when she didn't, after the first few times, I completely shut down. She doesn't understand me, she doesn't get it, she doesn't love me. But when I'm horny, I'm gonna go try and get some.
I'm flipping you off onto the table.
So you guys can see that there's an issue here, right? I had supposedly tried to communicate, and in my own mind, the story that I'd created was that I'd been shut down, that she didn't care about me. No, I didn't communicate that with her. I literally just shut down. And so she would ask me over and over and over again, what's wrong? And what was my standard response?
No.
Nothing. And I would storm off, or I'd cross my arms, or I'd move her out of the way so I could watch ESPN.
Yeah. Definitely true. Or Xbox.
Or Xbox. And so I'm getting more and more frustrated. She's getting more and more frustrated because of, again, this lack of communication. Like, you guys really want to know what your partner wants? Ask them. For the longest time, I didn't have any idea what my wife wanted. Because the only thing I cared about was what?
Messing around.
All I cared about was what I wanted. See, the secret to getting what you want out of your relationship, men, is giving your spouse what it is that they want. It's crazy how that works, isn't it? So, when did you start to see, like, a shift?
would say the communication started to change when you started listening to Garrett White, and we had started talking about it, and he had approached me about going to Warrior. And he's like, you have to listen to this, and I did listen. I'm like, that is way too vulgar for me. I'm like, I don't know how many times you can talk about man parts in one conversation. And
That's your nice way of saying penis.
well, that and poop, I don't know that one too. But I had just gotten you back to going to church, and then you throw that on, and I'm like, crap.
So prior to this, I want to back up a little bit. I'm not trying to jump over my wife, but I want to back up a little bit. So our life is not working, right? And we talked about this in the previous episode. Like, we're on the verge of divorce. The odds were highly in her favor that she was going to take everything, and I was going to end up with possibly my truck and maybe a pair of socks. And
Because you still expected me to do your laundry,
yeah.
even though you want me living in the house.
Lowest of lows, and I still wanted her to do my laundry. Yeah, I was that guy. So, but what had to change, I should say, is one basic thing, and it was this communication. And it wasn't just communication like just talking. Like, just talking is not communication. You brought this up at the beginning of this podcast, that we talked about communication on the radio. I want to share another story with you. So, when I had, I'm going to say about 4 years on, middle of summer in Arizona, yes, we do get rain. They're called monsoons. Usually they're pretty violent storms. We just get a big torrential downpour, and then it doesn't rain for the rest of the year. At least it seems that way. But I'm working the afternoon shift, and it's probably about 7 o'clock in the afternoon, evening, and we get this big, heavy downpour. Well, I've got an inability to sit still. My wife will tell you this. So I'm out and about. It's pouring rain, and I'm out and about trying to find someone or something that's moving. And sure enough, you search hard enough, you'll find it. So I find this guy on a bike. He's out, he's in the roadway, the classic no bike light, right? And so I try and light him up. I turn my lights on, nothing. I turn my siren, chirp it, woo woo, nothing. He turns around, looks at me, and he takes off on his bike. I'm like, oh, here we go. So I call it off on the radio. He makes it around the corner, and then I use the classic, how do I get the guy on the bike to slow down? Oh, that's right. I cut in front of him with my car, because my car is bigger than his bike. It's the actual.
Those are the stories that would make me roll my eyes.
Yes.
Like that poor guy.
So the poor guy loses his bike, kind of skids over the hood of the car, and takes off running. And then it's on. Like, it's foot pursuit, it's on. And so I'm chasing him. Well, he ends up jumping one wall through a backyard. I'm chasing after him. He jumps another wall over the backyard. I jump after that one. And then my radio falls. And so I pick it up, and I look around. I don't see the guy anymore. And I'm in the middle of this neighborhood that I'm not real familiar with. So I keep my mic to tell dispatch the last place that I saw him, and I'm clicking it, and nothing's happening. I'm literally clicking and nothing. I'm trying to get out, nothing. I turn my radio off. I turn it back on, nothing. So it's dark night. I'm in the middle of a backyard, and I have no clue where I am. Oh, yeah, that's right. And I have no idea where the suspect is. For you guys who have been in this situation before, you know that it's not a good situation to be in. Because when we fight unfair. We call all of our friends. So it's pouring rain, my radio's not working, I'm in the middle of a backyard, I have no idea where I am, and now I'm trying to find my way out while also possibly trying to find the suspect. And I hear sirens coming from a distance away. They don't know where I am because, well, I can't communicate with them. And they can't communicate with me. So it's almost like playing a big game of Marco Polo. So luckily I'm able to get out of this backyard, make it to the main street as my sergeant pulls up, and he's yelling and screaming, why aren't you talking on the radio? Why aren't you telling us what's going on? Why aren't you updating us? And I just pull up my radio that's soaking wet, and he looks at it, and he's one of those, okay, I get it. Right? But the reason that things weren't working that night, the reason that the guy got away, the reason that my coworkers couldn't come help me was because of what? It was because of a simple lack of communication. Now, it happened to be weather-related at this point, but regardless, it was a lack of communication that contributed to the failure of this event, of this call. How does that relate to your life? Well, guess what? You're wanting the cavalry, i.e. your family, to come help you, to come understand what's going on, to come assist you, but at the same time, you are not communicating this. Like, it's not getting out. And so I can't even tell you how many times that I really just wanted to tell Melissa, I need help. Like, things are not working for me right now. But because I sucked so much at communicating and I was so stubborn.
You were proud.
And, yes. And I was a proud asshole. With a capital ass. Like, I literally wanted help, but refused to ask for it. And so my wife was more than willing, and you heard her say it before, she was more than willing to help me out. But my inability to ask for help contributed to what?
Nothing. No help. Digging a pit.
And so I would blame her for why these things weren't working, when in actuality, I was the one not keying my mic on the radio, not communicating clearly where I was and what I needed. So, fast forward again, my wife kind of talked about it. So, the first thing I had to do was get clear on my communication. Like, and not this like pussyfoot around dance, like, okay, well, I heard from a guy that it might be possible that we might work things out, so I might possibly like to kind of work things out. Like, that wasn't going to work. And we quickly realized that. Like, the old pattern of me kind of asking for help got us where?
I think maybe like a day of change and it would get worse. So you take like one step forward and take like 50 back.
And we kept repeating this pattern, right? And
Yeah, I can totally picture those days where you're standing in a driveway with people that came to help you. It'd be like an hour you're out there, an hour and a half, then 2 hours, and you'd come back and nothing.
nothing. Like, just failure to communicate at all with my wife. Period. There was nothing there. And so I try and communicate the honest truth. And then I'd retreat. And then I'd try and then retreat. And I'd try and then retreat. And our relationship just wasn't getting better. Like, period, it was not getting better. So something had to change. Like, for once, I had to tell the truth. And I started to see this through this mentor of mine, Garrett Z. White. And literally the foundational principle of his program is simply tell the truth. Quit lying and tell the truth. Which is such a hard thing for us to do as police officers. Because at work, we're the coolest liars. Right? We lie to everybody about everything. Oh yeah, dude, I'm not going to take you to jail. Click, click, here we go. Oh yeah, dude, I'm sure you'll get out if you just tell me the truth on this interview. Just kidding. And we'd go home and try and play this game with our wives. And play this game with our kids. And how good are we at it?
We will accept what you're saying, but we know it's bullcrap.
Interesting. That your spouse always knows when you're lying. Like, I can't even track how many lies that I told my wife. Again. Because there were so many.
The best part was that you actually thought that we believed you on most of them.
So here I am thinking that I'm this, like, cool cop, right? Like, oh, dude, I could pull one over these bad guys. I'm like this undercover, like, master, like, oh, yeah. You guys can't see it on the podcast where my wife is rolling her eyes. But it's true, this is what I thought. And I would go home and try and pull the same game with my wife, and she would literally roll her eyes because she knew that it wasn't the truth. So all you men who are thinking that you're pulling one over on your wife,
Nope.
not happening. Not happening. So anyway, I go to this program and I come back and all of a sudden, like, I see clearly that the only way that I'm going to get what I want out of life is to start to communicate. And not communicate half-assed, but go all in on communication. And so I start to do this, and what does that do to you? I'm curious.
At that point, it was like I'm pretty trusting of people. I'm like, you pretty much have to burn me really bad before I stop believing you. So, like, it was kind of like mentally I believed you, but my heart was like, whatever. Like, it was like a mind game at that point.
Because I'd spent so many years burying her in literal bullshit. Like, just burying her. And so here I am, come riding in on the honest train, choo-choo. I'm going to tell you the truth. Yeah. And so she's like rolling her eyes. She's rolling her eyes because the truth is, I've got a pattern of lying or telling half-truths. So how long did it take before you finally started to believe me again?
It was several months. It definitely was not overnight.
Several months of, I would say it was probably 6 to 8 months
Yeah.
of just telling her the truth.
It was funny because you would say, like, when you would tell me things about your past, I'm like, yeah, I already know. And you would say something else like, yeah, I already know.
So you men who think that your women don't know, like, they already know. You're not as smart as you think you are. Just saying. So 6 to 8 months of every day telling the truth. Every day telling the truth. And it's not like, you guys think all of a sudden you can just flip a switch, tell the truth, and things are going to change. No, it's not going to happen that way.
Well, and you think it's kind of refreshing on your behalf, but it causes more hell on, like, mine.
Because why?
Because it's no longer, I think he did this, now it's like, well, now he flat out told me he did this, and it hurts.
So all your lies, like, you guys think this, like, big weight has been lifted off your chest because now you're telling the truth. The problem is that not only has your wife had to dealt with your lies, or had to deal with your lies, she also now has to deal with you telling her what she knew all along. So you're going to go through a period of time where your wife is going to be pissed off at you again.
It's more like a mourning period, if anything.
And why is that?
Because it's no longer, and I think it's an I know what it does and how it makes you feel, and as you process everything and you want to know more, and it just hurts.
So what does that do to you, like, on the inside? Like, you've had to deal with all these lies. That you already knew the truth. And then now
I
I'm
really know the
completely-
truth.
What was that?
And now you really, really know the truth.
So what does that do to you, like, emotionally?
Well, there are times, like even now, that I read your crap and I hate you for a good 10, 15 minutes.
Like, I want you guys to listen to this. We've been doing this for well over 2 years of just telling the truth, the raw truth. And so now, with what it is that I'm doing, sharing my experiences, sharing my life with you guys, I'm bringing up stories and experiences from my past that she still doesn't know about.
I wouldn't say I don't know, but like I just, like, you purposely block it out.
So I'm like, she's already put a Band-Aid on it, and she's trying to let it heal. Then I come by and I'm like, rip, and just pull the Band-Aid off again. So, gentlemen, this is not an easy process. Like, we're still working on it. And guess what? I'm pretty sure for the rest of my life, I'm going to be working on it. Like, I buried her. And I'm not proud of that. But I also know that the only way to get what we want out of life is to literally, handful by handful, start to unbury all the lies that I buried her. So if you're looking for an answer, I'll tell you the answer. If you're looking for a shortcut, I'll tell you there are no shortcuts. The answer is simple. Today, stop lying and tell the truth. That's it. It's not easy. It's not a short period of time. It's going to take a while, but it's worth it. So if you can start off telling the truth, you're going to see that eventually your relationship will start to shift in the direction that you want it to go. But that's not it. Right? Truth is the beginning of communication. There's so many ways that your wife needs to connect with you that you've been ignoring. Some of you, I know you buy flowers like once a year. Cool, good on you. That's better than 0 times a year. But like, what about more often than that? What about giving your wife notes of appreciation? What about taking the kids and letting her go get her nails done? What about taking her on an overnight, just you and her? What about? You guys can see that the possibilities are endless. Listen, I don't know exactly what your wife likes. She might not be into manicures and pedicures. She might like
A bag of chips.
Huh?
A bag of chips.
She might just like a bag of chips, which sometimes she gets too. So, but listen, the point is that if you want to have a better relationship with your wife, 1, stop lying and tell the truth, and 2, start treating her like who she really is. Like, she's not an animal, she's not your slave, she is literally your partner in crime. Like the same way that you treat your detective partner or your partner on the streets, you guys work graveyards together, like that's how you have to treat your wife, but even better. I know you guys share everything, like I get it. I had some of those partners too over the years. But that's how you have to treat your wife. In fact, better than that. So cool. I just gave you the key. The key is simple. Stop lying, tell the truth, and start treating her like who she really is. You call her your queen. How about you start treating her like one? Instead of pretending that you are. All right. Any last words you have for these fine young fellows today?
It's literally just stop and think what tiny little things you are or are not doing and how they affect your family.
Just like you wouldn't run in down a hallway without first clearing the corner. It's the same thing with your wife and your kid. Take a second. Huh?
You know what? This one bothered me it still bothers me how many times do you read those books and it says, let your cop come in and relax for the first 15, 20, 30 minutes and just let them breathe. You know what? I totally get that. But holy crap, if you guys came home and poured out all that you possibly could for those first 15, 20, 30 minutes, I guarantee your life would change if you just flip that around.
There you go. From the expert. Quit burying your stuff inside and let it out. You think that she doesn't want to hear. You think that she doesn't want to help. But the truth is that she does. All right, gentlemen and ladies, if you're listening, that is it for today. If you want more information, I got something for you. It's called... Actually, what is it called? Did I ever come up with a name for it? The Tactical Guide to Becoming Elite. I think that's the name I came up with.
Yes, it is.
The Tactical Guide to Becoming Elite. So how is it that I got to where I am right now? How is it that I have a marriage on fire? How is it that I have a relationship with my kids that I never had? How is it that I have a body that functions for me? Oh yes, and that big thing that you guys are all worried about, money? Yes, I no longer work for it. It works for me. And there is a method behind it. So I lay this out in this tactical guide to becoming a lead. If you go to awakentheguardian.com, enter your name and email address, I'll make sure you get a copy of this. It is free, F-R-E, free. Why? Because I know how much you guys like free stuff. But until next time, stay safe. We'll see you on the next one.